I do feel like Bill Barr was a plant. I feel like Mitch McConnell is a plant for the Democrats.
That was one of many rally goers that Jordan Uhl spoke to over the weekend. The rally that was held in the nation's capital was meant to be in support of the January 6th Capitol Hill rioters, who of course stormed the Capitol. Now let's hear more from these individuals who seem to think that what happened on January 6th was some sort of government-led hoax.
I believe the government perpetrated the attack on the Capitol. Certainly the MAGA people showed up here and walked up there. The people wanted to support Trump because they know he won the election. They know the election was fraud. And I think that the majority of people breaking our beautiful Capitol and busting things, I think they were government people. They were somehow affiliated with Nancy Pelosi and her wicked cabal.
Okay, so the rally goers, and it was a small rally, didn't end up being a giant rally as the organizer had expected, are there in order to provide or fight for justice for the January 6th rioters. But if you think that it was a government hoax, why are you there? I don't really get how any of this makes any logical sense whatsoever. But it is fascinating how the bad behavior of Trump supporters, who Trump incited on that day, is now like the responsibility of the federal government. Like the federal government did this. This is a giant hoax. I don't really know what to say to this.
But look, the human ability to lie to ourselves is amazing. And it's mainly just to feel better emotionally. So remember, these guys originally thought it was Antifa. Remember, that was their first excuse. And then they arrested the guys and they were all MAGA, and so that was inconvenient. So then they turned it into they're patriots and they did the right thing. Then they turned into it was the wrong thing, but the deep state did it. And they tricked our poor friends into doing it as well.
Obviously.
Okay, and so that's why we think that the good MAGA people who were originally Antifa people but are kind of deep state people should all be released. But yet that makes sense to them. Because why? They want to feel good about being a conservative, being right wing, and the facts are getting in the way. They want to feel like they're more American, but they're against American democracy. So the facts are getting in the way. Yep. So if the facts are getting in the way, you just tell Jordan Uhl, you know what, it's government conspiracy and that's why it's us.
I mean, if you want to like twist and turn and bend yourself into some sort of pretzel, like do yoga. It's better for your mental health, right?
That's likely to be very persuasive with that gentleman.
Yeah, I doubt it, right? But let's go to one more video from Jordan Uhl's coverage, and we'll include a link to the full video in the description box if you're watching this up on YouTube. Take a look.
Would you say overall it's a hoax?
Well, the big thing is, the injustice of this. Is here you have people who have been sitting in jail for 9 months for what, for most cases, would be misdemeanor trespass, without bail, without any recourse, nothing. Held in solitary confinement, which is inhumane, which is mental torture, and which is actually in the torture handbook. So these people are being tortured for 9 months for basically misdemeanor trespass, where you have people who are burning, looting, blinding police with lasers, and you have the current vice president who set up bail funds for them. They made sure that their charges were all dropped. Where you have this handful of people who, again, there was probably a couple dozen people who broke windows, pushed their way through doors, and other than those couple dozen people, everybody else just wandered unopposed into the building.
So just to give you some specific numbers, you can respond to all the lunacy in just a second, but I want to give you guys some facts. At least 610 individuals have been federally charged for their involvement in the January 6th riot at the United States Capitol. That's according to the DOJ. Most of the roughly 60 who remain behind bars are suspects prosecutors and judges have identified as posing a credible and ongoing threat to the public safety. We're talking about militia members, people who have basically threaten to use violence if they don't have their way in regard to the outcome of the general election. And so that's a problem. But I will note one thing. This gentleman seems concerned about the use of solitary confinement within our justice system, within our prisons. I hope that he extends that kind of thinking to other prisoners, because I happen to agree with him on that. I think that solitary confinement is abusive. I do think it's a form of torture. It's just fascinating that that kind of thinking usually does not extend to other prisoners. It seems like he only cares about it when it comes to these Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol that day.
Yep, so super happy to see him worried about overcriminalization in our justice system. I'm sure that the solitary confinement that we were so strenuously objected to when it was applied to Chelsea Manning outraged him, and he probably called for justice in her case. Maybe not. But the solitary confinement that they subject African American prisoners to all the time, which oftentimes leads to suicides because it actually is torture and is illegal under international law. I'm sure he deeply objects to that. Oh, he's never objected to that before. Now, I don't know for sure, he's a rando in the street, but you and I know we would all be dramatically surprised if any of these guys were concerned about it before it happened to their right-wing brothers. And by the way, he's not right, as Anna pointed out. 90% of these folks are out already, and they're going to come back for their actual trials, etc. But we trust them. Why? Oh, they're only right wingers who are trying to overthrow democracy. It's not like they're black or anything. So that's the reality. By the way, also check out a deep dive with Jordan Ewell on twitch.tv/TYT. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.